Welcome to this episode of Rule of Carnage. This is a series of podcast conversations on this YouTube channel between myself, Glenn Ford, a games designer and developer, and my good chum, Mike Hutchinson, also a games designer and developer, where we talk about designing better miniatures games. So one of the contributions to the world of designing better miniatures games that we have been involved with to some degree over the last few weeks and months is the One Box War Game Challenge, which is going absolutely great guns on the Rule of Carnage Discord. So the idea of the One Box War Game Challenge is that you pick a box of miniatures. It can be a digital box as well as a physical box. And it's like a single purchase. And then you design a game based around that box of minis. It's been set up by the wonderful Malev of our Discord. Swing by there, talk with the massive number of interested other designers doing this also. It's very low impact, like very low cost. Just pick a single box of minis or whatever. You don't even need to physically own them. It's a great way of joining a community, getting motivated to get something designed and out there. And it's been sponsored by the wonderful people at War Games Atlantic. So the top three games as voted for on a public vote will get actual physical rewardy goodness. Well, not physical rewardy goodness. I think it'll be vouchers towards buying physical rewardy goodness.
The promise of physical rewardy goodness.
Yeah, one of the designs as chosen by the people at War Games Atlantic will be published by them, at least digitally. Other things will be worked out as things go along. So it's a great opportunity to get moving on a design. Just get an idea that you've got out there physically. There's tons of people in the challenge just saying how motivating and how much of a driver it's been and how much of a healthy experience it's been to get this thing done and out there. So if you have any sort of ideas or feelings about designing something, this is a great opportunity to get out there. Or just if you want to like playtest stuff, there's like over 100 channels on the Discord right now of people designing games where you can play test them and help them give feedback. Now, in a video that was just posted to the channel, I talked about my process and thoughts behind my very dark, frankly, one box war game design.
Yeah, someone in the Discord said, this game doesn't give me the name of this game doesn't give me good feelings. And you were like, good.
yes, Dulce et Decorum Est makes people feel a bit uncomfortable. And I said, yeah, it probably is meant to. It probably should do. It's sort of, I've been reading about the Brenda Romero game Train and things like that while thinking about designing it. So it's a pretty sort of there's a heavy game, I think, sort of in spirit. But I've been having good fun working on it. I've got just a minute, my little guys over here, I'm partway through painting my little patients in their little hospital beds. I don't know if that's too fuzzy. So Mike is also heroically throwing his hat into the ring with the One Box War Game Design Challenge. And he's here about to announce the box he's chosen, although, Mike, you haven't yet got anything more than sort of ideas and feelings?
Well, so I've been holding back on throwing my hat in the ring because I've been on holiday for a few weeks, and my goodness, this thing kicked off with more gusto than I think anyone expected. So I took a little while to sort of think about which one box I wanted, and I saw, obviously there's a billion different suggestions and ideas that are flowing through the Discord, but me, don't really like little chaps as much as I like vehicles. So I started thinking about that and looking at some different boxes. War Games Atlantic obviously is the sort of place that this started, and you get a box of miniatures from War Games Atlantic for about 20 quid, 25 quid. So I did want, specifically, I wanted to do very much in the same kind of vein that Malev was doing. I wanted an actual physical box. It had to be, like, for me, it had to be in print. It had to be about 20, 25 pounds. It needed like a decent number of miniatures in so that I feel like I'm having a game. And so after much deliberation, in which I discarded, sadly, the box of astronauts that you can get from the Airfix company, which was very close.
Somebody's using that.
Oh, excellent.
Somebody's using
Excellent.
that in the challenge.
So I don't know if anybody's using this one yet. This is Warlord Games Black Seas Frigate and Briggs Flotilla. I think this is a sort of nation independent expansion box where you get 2 slightly bigger ships and 4 slightly smaller ships, which by my reckoning gives you a 2-player game of 1 big and 2 small, which sounds like a sort of smallish Man of War game or a sort of normalish size Gaslands game. So what I'm intending to do with these is combine them with an earlier scrap of an idea I had during lockdown, the name of which was Rad Pirates of the Toxic Seas, which is a good enough title to have stuck around with me. And I'm going to combine these ships with these beer cans, which are the Time and Tide beer cans illustrated by sort of acquaintance of mine, Greg Stobbs, who's a wonderful artist, and he's got these things with so anyway, I'm not gonna put the sails on these. I'm gonna give them like bits of scrap metal cut up with illustrations on it. So these are going to be made into some kind of, you know, post-apocalyptic water world situation. And I'm also combining it with a deep memory of the Pirates of Blackwater cartoon series from the 90s, which was set on a different world where the seas have got pirates on them, and for some reason there's like a black oily substance that keeps like rising up and causing terror. And I spent last weekend watching Nausicaa and the Valley of the Wind, and happened to also watch the Earthsea stories from Ghibli as well. Anyway, so I'm sort of all of that stuff's mashing together in my brain. So it's going to be a game in which you have these 3 ships, and it will probably be a sort of treasure hunting / battering each other with cannonade situation. And it will, for certain, feature this object, which I have shown to Glenn before, which is an intriguing triple-dialed, triple-wheeled thing, which is not as difficult to manufacture as you'd think, because you just need one of those butterfly clips that holds it together. So you just cut these 3 circles out. I think they might even all fit on a single piece of paper. Cut these 3 circles out, and you stick them together. And what this gives you is a thing where, if you know where north is because you've picked a side of the table, then you roll a dice to see where the wind direction is going, and you point the little blue arrow, which says wind direction. And then you go and hover this thing near to the ship, and you rotate this dial around to the direction that the ship is pointing in. And that, where is it? Where's my finger gone? And this part here tells you which sort of sailing you're currently involved in. So if the wind is blowing in that direction and you're facing directly into the place that the wind is blowing from, let's make it even easier. The wind is blowing from the north. If you're facing north, then you are in irons, and so then it will tell you what it is that you do. And the fun thing about this dial is that it's got a bunch of specifics about how movement interacts with Gaslands templates, and we'll get to that in a minute. But actually, this dial is a generic solution, because you could put any rule you wanted in these subsections. This dial simply navigates you to the correct rules block. So it's quite fun, because actually, as I'm working on this game, I'm thinking, ooh, the dial can exist regardless of whether I swap out the previous thing. So the previous thing was Gaslands movement templates, and very specifically using this chap as the cannon. So you've got, I don't have one of these built, so we'll have to use this eraser. So this is your ship, and you go broadside, boom, and it's very satisfying, and it looks exactly like a cannonade, like puff of smoke. It's brilliant. That's the beginnings. Oh, and there's one other part, which is I've been working on a lot of deck building games, so I'm imagining doing some deck building, and this is partly because I am a lover of have you ever played Buccaneer, the ancient pirate board game where you pootle your ship from a home port to Treasure Island, and you pick up some treasure and you pootle back? You ever played that?
No, not the board game. No.
Played it so much, absolutely love it. In that you have a hand of cards which has got black pirates and red pirates, and they have different numbers on them. And there's a nifty little system where what is it? It's like the one that you've got the most of is the one that's in control, and the difference is I can't remember how the system works, but anyway, there's something clever in that. But the other thing about this is that with a deck of cards, I could just have like, well, the black ones are the gunners and the red ones are the sailors, and so now we've got shooting and moving as a set of cards. And so maybe if you've got a deck and you start with like, 7 red cards of medium numbers and 3 black cards of medium numbers, and then there's some crew cards that you can purchase, and you're playing to move your ships around, and how effectively you can move is going to be like, well, I need to swing round, or I need to pick the right template, so that like if I need to stay in the right place, then I need to move, and I need to move enough so that I'm in the right spot, but not too much so that I end up in the wrong part of the wind. So this all feels like there's plenty of fun to be had here.
So I really love a good Age of Sail minis game. The thing that is, I think that the needle to thread with them is that they want to be, but often are, extremely brutal if things go bad. Between
we talked about this a bit a million years ago when we talked about Man of War, which is like the punishingness of, did you mess up getting the wind prediction right?
Because between the fact that the wind gauge, when it goes against you, it should be absolutely devastating.
Yep.
Because it's like when somebody, like historically, when one ship has the wind on another, it's just like, well, you're just stuffed. You're just done. Welcome to the last few hours of your life. Plus, a properly applied broadside is just horrifying. It's just an absolutely devastating, horrifying, terrible sort of thing to have happen. And so, like, a really good Age of Sail minis game is often a lot of really like cagey maneuvering, and then just somebody getting absolutely pantsed in the most horrible and painful way possible.
Right, and that second thing is super easy, because it's just like, well, damage can be the rate of damage can be as whatever is the funnest rate of damage. And the damage mechanic might be it's knocking cards out of your hand, it might be putting damage cards into your hand. I need to figure out like a damage mechanic that is both accelerating the game towards the end, but is also not just a fun crumper.
Yeah, it's tough.
And the other thing is that, as you're talking about that first issue, that's super interesting, because like if we essentially like post-apocalyptic rad pirates, then maybe like we mostly use our sails because gas is expensive, it's essentially spending money. But maybe that provides like a limited resource where like part of the skill is the brutality is offset a bit by the fact that I can spend some amount of a limited resource in order to escape the times that I am stuck in irons. But that just provides a different moment of frustration or a delay. The question is, does it delay it long enough that it's fun and it's an interesting decision when to spend your limited little tank of gasoline?
I think it's like a lot of those sorts of problems in design generally, is that you want it to be there and be threatening and dangerous.
Yeah.
You want there to be enough mitigation that if and when it does happen to you, you can sort of put your hands up and go, fair cop, this was my own fault, and it has happened, and it should happen, and it's right and good that it happened, and now, hello spanking.
Yeah, so for example, I'm imagining like I was maneuvering well, but the wind swung unexpectedly. Like, annoying, slightly cinematic. Now I'm in irons. Okay, annoying. I've got to deal with that. I use my one of my one or two limited fuels to pull myself out. great. But then I like accidentally picked the wrong maneuver and pulled myself back round into being in irons. Okay, now I'm the idiot because I like used the risk reward template system incorrectly, rather than the first time where it was like it was a fun bit of bad luck, but don't make that happen to me all the time.
Yeah, because it's like one of my big issues with uh Man of War ultimately was that they gave too much stuff like ores or
Yeah.
engines or stuff of that nature, which totally negated you bothering to. It's like they're into whole forces that just don't care about the wind gauge at all. That it just doesn't matter which way the wind is blowing because you're flying around on a massive winged ship because you're Zinch or you're dwarves that just haven't got sails anyway. And so like the sort of, for me, the most mechanically interesting part of the game, most of the competitive forces just went, well, I'm not gonna bother dealing with it because it's a pain in the hole. Um and so it's like it's one of those ones for me where I want I want somebody to get boned by the wind at some point. And if it's
Yeah.
me, that's fair enough because that's the game I'm playing. But I do want it to come in and it to be like, oh no, I am screwed for the next 3 turns.
Mm.
I'm just in such bad trouble. And if he can get up on me in those 3 turns, I'm done for. Kind of fit to me should be like, for me, that's part of the flavor of an Age of Sail game, you know. Um, and it's I guess the thing is to get it so that it's like, and then he does come up on you, and it's just over. Rather than the worst thing, I think, when a game of Man of War is good, the worst thing about it is when you are limping around with all those bits of damage on you that just mean that you're a sort of technically part of the game, but in reality, it's just a floating hulk. Um, so I think getting the timing and the rate of damage, because again, a ship should have like, it feels like a ship should have progressive like damage things and parts of it getting broken and it having an effect on the game. But you don't want it to be the effect on the game being that it slows down to a painful crawl and no one's having any fun. Because
Yes.
there is often that bit towards the end of Age of Sail games where everyone's floating around with like half a sail and one cannon, just like popping each other, going, "How many? What's the turn limit on this? Can it be snip snap?"
Yeah, totally, 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 totally. And I think the other element of this is if I was going to write one scenario, it's probably going to be some kind of treasure based sort of piratey type situation. And I've written those a couple of times, so I'll just have to figure out like what was the funnest way of doing it. And whether that is like everybody's big ship is the one carrying the treasure, or like you distribute the treasure across the ships, or there's one pile of treasure in the middle that we're scrapping over. I don't want it. I don't want it to be a get the treasure and run away, because that's probably going to be a disengagey type situation. Um, but yeah,
Again, it's difficult. Those sorts of scenarios with like things that have to keep moving are often really difficult. You can't you. It's so hard to do like a hold the position or claim the.
yeah, no, it absolutely is. So like one thing that can be fun is like um blow up the other guy so that he drops the thing, and then I have to like circle back round to pick the thing up, which is way more interesting in an inertia based game, because it's like, oh, I gotta get round, like I've got to line up the right shot, but the right, particularly with broadsides, the right shot is also the wrong situation to be able to pick up the thing. So maybe I need to line up two ships. One's going to deliver the killing blow, and the other one's going to come in and scoop up the loot from the wreckage. So I think there's maybe some fun to be had treating it a bit like how Gaslands treats the sort of salvage, the automated salvage stuff with, maybe there's some kind of, because with automated salvage in Gaslands, there's like a shoot the grappling hook to get the thing, and that could be a little bit like, maybe there's some boarding actions where you nick stuff. I don't know. I
No,
think
yeah, I appreciate you haven't got it sort of pinned down yet, but that's part of what development side of it, because what it instantly makes me think that the treasure picking up thing makes me think of the Pirates of the Spanish Main, the WizKids
Hmm.
game,
Yeah.
where the min the I mean, we've said this, we've mentioned this more than once on the channel. The minis from that are brilliant and genius, and those cards, I love every part of it. The actual game itself, like the little rules pamphlet you're provided with, such garbage. And like the single scenario for that was the go to an island, get treasure, take it back to your own island thing. And I remember I played it once or twice where everyone just pootled back and forth, going, "All right, yeah, all right, I'm getting some treasure, lovely. See you later." And like the one person who engaged just horribly regretted it because I'm stopping picking up treasure to attack you. I don't know why you'd bother. The treasure is the only thing that
Right,
matters.
and in the game Buccaneer, that sort of that game is based on mechanically, like it's a board game, it's not a sort of war game. So
Mm.
you sort of understand initially that it's a race game, and you occasionally get blown to the wrong port, or it's you occasionally have decisions where it's like, oh, there's kind of a juicy thing over there that instead of going to Treasure Island to get something random, I'm going to go and get the certain thing that's over there. And then very occasionally someone scores big on Treasure Island, you're like, well, I'm just here. I seem to be loaded up with cannon. Let me just go piracy over here as an opportunistic thing. But I think in this game with these miniatures, I think people are going to expect to barrel towards each other's, sh- cannons blaring, and I do need to deal with that.
Yeah, it's sort of figuring out making it worthwhile to actually engage. It's
Hmm.
always if that is what you want from a design, that is always the thing that is sort of trickiest to get right with scenarios. I think we've said several times, it's shocking how often you see scenarios and you read it over a few times and you go, I just mean if I just walk off in this direction, isn't that much more efficient and better for me? And oh yeah, it is. Yeah.
So then there's another element that I haven't really got straight in my head, which is sort of inspired roughly by this, like Pirates of the Dark Sea. Um, is that what it's called? Pirates of the Dark Sea. I'm pretty sure it's called that. Which is like one thing that's normally boring in sailing games is terrain,
Hmm.
and one thing that could be interesting is to like almost take a like robot rally conveyor belt approach to like terrain. Like, are there oil slicks and like, freak sort of quicksand puddles and pushing puddles? Like, is the toxic sea an interesting place to navigate because it's got like really weird stuff going on that just doesn't normally happen in Age of Sail games? So you've got the Age of Sail stuff to navigate, but are there like pockets where the wind is backwards, or stuff where you get pushed automatically, or that kind of nonsense? And is that something that is like random terrain that you discover, a la mysterious terrain in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, or is this like an element that is within the hands of the players, and you're essentially kind of invoking not weather magic because that wouldn't fit the theme, but it's like, you represent the misfortunes of the oily toxic slump.
So is the sea sort of alive? Is it malicious?
I think so, yeah.
And so is that like is it so therefore players play things on each other because you're just representing the intelligence of the sea, or does the sea have like its own AI situation? Does it have its own deck?
No, I think it's part of the deck building thing, insofar as like if there was custom cards, they'd be like, well, you've got the custom card where like the black tentacle comes up and like nicks a crew member off the other ship. And it's not like you shooting them, so it's independent, but it's like some other thing. So I don't know how that would work exactly. Maybe it's like the picture cards represent elements of the sea being available to you.
I feel like yeah, if you're thinking about using a hand of cards in order to manage the ships, and that you're not then using those cards to be the ocean, I think that's a potential real disappointment.
Hmm.
My my instant reaction is to go, okay, when you use a card to like operate your ship, you discard it, and yours or your enemy's C deck is your discarded like ship operation deck. And then if it's your enemies, weak ship operation cards are powerful ocean cards, or if it's your own, just powerful ship cards are powerful ocean cards. And then you, as you sort of, if you constantly use powerful ship operation cards and your ship's like doing really well, then your opponent is getting an easy time on the ocean, or you're getting a hard time on the ocean, and vice versa. And then you can like the same deck can operate both things and can have a sort of reverse deck building operation. Does that make sense? Where like if every time I discard a card, it goes over and becomes like your ocean card, and then and then I can like deck build what the ocean's doing to you, but I have to take certain decisions in order to do that. That would
Yeah,
be
it
like,
makes me think of, I can't remember which specific family of card games where it's like I can draw a card off the deck, or I can draw the last card that was discarded. Those kind of standard children's games. So maybe there's also an element of like, well, yeah, because I was thinking maybe you each have a deck, but if it's a single shared deck and the contact point between our two decks is essentially the roiling ocean, and maybe like discarding a high card has the rubber band effect of making that high card available for the other player to play as a C card, or as you suggest, like it's simply that like I'm discarding my cards to be your current ocean threat level, and so that provides some sequencing, some kind of additional decision making on it. Yeah, that could be cool.
yeah, possibly it's like there's a little bit of pre-game deck building where you sort of you build your ship deck, and the leftovers of the ocean deck of one or the other person, and then you shuffle and flip an ocean deck card each time. So if you reversed it so that like weak cards for you are powerful cards for the ocean, if you built a very powerful ship deck, you'd have built yourself a very damaging ocean deck. Stuff like stuff like that. I think I'd consider sort of fiddling around with. I think that I like the idea of the ocean being a conveyor, pushing
Mm.
you forwards or pulling you back. Um, or to the thing again about the wind gauge is I think it'd be interesting because I reckon that a lot of pushing you forwards or pulling you back would be less worrying than a little bit of pivoting you round. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I'd sort of be inclined to go like, yeah, have it fling people forwards and blow them up, but don't have it like turn them at 90 degrees to one side because everyone's just going to be like, oh no.
Yeah.
Why? Um,
Yeah, and the other thing is that we've got cards, so our cards physically in the play area as areas of like as trap cards, where it's like, okay, so part of my ability is to like lay these cards down, and maybe I have to lay them down, so sometimes I have to put like weak cards that aren't really very scary. And so then like, I don't know, do I leave silage behind me as I move? Do I play them just like within a range? That could be fun as well, as like sort of like hidden caltrops and stuff, which represents the ocean doing its oceany stuff, but it's just that as a player I get some agency about where these things are, and because we've got the physical space to cover with a card, like that's kind of a cool thing that could be done.
I mean, having played like Nurgle forces in Man of War, things that trail out the back of your ship tend to be rubbish because you're never getting your back of your ship. You're not going to like reverse your ship onto
Mm.
somebody in order to hit them with that. The trail of filth in Nurgle ships never did anything because nobody was ever like directly behind you. But what I do wonder is like if there is a thing of like the card you use gets laid in your wake and it chases after you at a certain speed, and it's you disturbing the ocean, and that's what's going to cause the ocean to come back and hit you. um that might be sort of a curious sort of thing where like you're trailing your history behind you and every now and again it jumps up and bites you. um
Mm.
Feels like that might be quite sort of thematic and piratey, where the dark things you did in the past follow you around as you sail, and occasionally manage to get a hold of you and drag you down.
Yeah, it sort of makes me wonder about Snake or Dominoes or something, where it's like, the
Yeah,
faster I'm moving, um the more of a problem I'm causing for myself.
I mean, there is definitely now you said that there's definitely a version of this where nobody has any guns and you are just doing like
Yeah, no, that's not a bad shout. That's an interesting idea. I mean, there's also a version of this where you don't use Gaslands templates because you don't need to, because you place a card in front of you and you move across that card, and then it is already left on the table as your wake.
yeah. I mean, of it, that. I mean, back to Pirates of the Spanish Main, the movement in that.
Yeah, that was how the movement worked in that.
But yeah, no, I think there's definitely potentially a thing where, I mean, what if there's a card and like if you want to turn, you have to put the card like side on or angle on to the previous card.
Hmm.
And so you literally are creating a snake of cards behind you, and there, like I say, there aren't really guns, but the wake is like the horrifying black sea churned up, and anybody that hits the wake is horribly damaged. And what you are actually trying to do is create a snake around the opposing ships and backwards and
Right, to sort of
try and do that.
entrap them, but
Yeah.
they're evaporating at a certain rate or something.
Yeah, probably there's a sort of, and equally, I guess that would be the potential thing where better cards evaporate more quickly as you lay them down, maybe. Or there's like your tail can add up to a total of, let's say, 8 pips. And so if you lay a load of ones and twos and threes, you can have a really long trail. Whereas if you,
Maybe that starts to feel like I was imagining laying them face down, because then
yeah,
they look
I
kind
was
of
first.
consistent. And I think once you lay them face up, the whole thing just looks like a total mess.
Yeah, that might be.
Unless they were see-through playing cards specifically designed to integrate with your mat.
That would,
Uh,
yeah, that would be the ideal, of
that
course.
would be amazing. Uh,
But generally, I personally, and I know it seems at the moment I just default to throwing guns out from like every game that I come across because they're not as much fun.
I
But
know, but the thing is that like I can only shoot out the side. Well, this is green, so it's not showing up on the
yeah, I
green
know.
screen. The idea that there's a short ranged, I can only shoot out the side thing, like that's inherently much more interesting. Like I've got to maneuver, I have to get close, therefore I'm in threat range. Like that isn't really a shooting attack. But yeah, I totally get you. Like the idea that you have to ensnare and entangle people could be interesting. Equally, it could just be kind of it could just be a bit more of like an annoying slow game
Yeah,
where to entangle you requires you to move in a certain way that's against the wind, whereas the other person has the easy way because they're moving from the opposite direction. So it might play poorly with the wind gauge.
yeah, definitely. Sort of like you have the image of like Tron light cycles, but they move at a fair old clip. Is very much the point of that game. Whereas the idea of Age of Sail,
Yeah, a Tron light cycle game where you're laying like 6 or 8 cards and sometimes they're changing directions in the middle of it. I'd find a different box of miniatures for that, but
yeah,
that'd be cool.
that's a cool thing. Also, though,
That's a cool game. That's a
that's a
good
cool
game
game.
idea.
Someone should do that.
That's a good game idea.
So,
There are often times when I wish I had more Gaslands template duplicates, and like you could lay lots of Gaslands templates out and lay them around and stuff. But I
I,
think that like the wind gauge plus the moving, the like restricted movement of the templates, I do think there's lots like that makes sailing feel really cool and intuitive. So I don't think I would use the cards as the movement widget. I think the movement curves, the curved movement shapes is more interesting and fun, and means you don't have to do annoying stuff like take a 45-degree pivot every 2 moves and all that tedious wargamey stuff.
yeah, no. I mean, I've just been using cards as sort of combined movement templates in Bowl, so maybe that was just partly in my head for that.
Hmm.
So, is Rad Pirates of the Toxic Seas in a Gaslands universe? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, Yeah, I think so. It might be like the Mediterranean and like the Toxic Sea is like partially kind of like nanobot hell, um, something like that. Or it might just be like, it might just be like a seriously radioactive, like oil and toxic goo sort of situation where it's like one of the Great Lakes or something is like, I don't know, but it's definitely a Gaslands world thing.
Well, because if it's a Gaslands, if it's a televised death sport, that does give you sort of ideas of what the scenarios could be. Instantly, what I'm wondering is like, actual sailing races, and I know it's not, this isn't Gaslands, but actual sailing races have like, they obviously don't have gates, do they? They have like quite specific
They
rules.
have buoys that you have to go outside of, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I wonder if there's an option there as to like,
Regattas.
yeah, a sort of regatta system of needing to get around the buoy whilst attacking the other guy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if it's televised. It might be a bit more Waterworld than that. I don't know.
Oh well, there we
But
go.
yeah, you're right. That might not be a mechanical thing. That might be a scenario thing. Um,
I think definitely, as always, sort of figuring out the scenario motivations is the vital thing to get right in it.
well, I started with about 7 ingredients. I've now got like north of a dozen, so
That
plenty to be cracking on with here.
that seems to be the story of the One Box War Game Design Challenge.
Yeah.
So that's Mike's entry into the One Box War Game Design Challenge. Currently running on the Rule of Carnage Discord. It I suppose this video is going to be going up in 4 days from when we're actually recording it. Is Mike going to have something for people to read by the time this video goes up?
Oh, now you're asking. I mean, I've got quite a few things that I have to do for other humans who are relying on me, so maybe not, but we shall see.
Well,
Maybe the coffee will kick in unexpectedly tomorrow.
there is
It's
going to be
still school holidays here in the UK as we record, so I am also somewhat beholden to family activities. But we shall see. Maybe by the time it goes up, but
well,
maybe not.
there's going to be a link below this video to our Discord. Within that
Yes,
Discord, there is at least going to be a channel called Rad Pirates of the Toxic Seas. Go there
yep.
now
With a
and
picture of
see
me going,
go there now and see if Mike has done anything in relation to this game. If he has done something, give him comments and feedback and pats on the head. If he hasn't done something, shout rude words at him until he does.
"Come on, Mike! You crowed that you could write a new miniatures game in 2 days. Why haven't you
you
done so?"
you were all up in our faces about how you could do this. And when you're there, like, join in with the challenge yourself if you haven't already. It's great fun. It's just, even if you don't get a game out, it doesn't matter. You
What
know,
I love about this challenge is that it reduces the scope so much that you don't have to worry about like, how am I going to have factions and will there be giant armies and how is it all going to work? And it also reduces the what's the word I'm looking for? Like the savageness of failure. Like it reduces the thing, that word that I'm looking for that can no longer come to me at 11:15 at night. You can just make something and it can be okay. Like it's
yeah.
fine. If it's okay, that's great.
Yeah, there's a month left of the challenge by the time you see this video. No one's expecting you to get, your magnum opus done in a month and play tested and up. Go out there, pick up a game, pick up a box set of miniatures, put a game together with it that can be as simple and as silly and as funny and as short and as small as you like. And if you don't finish it, it's fine. We're not going to come round and judge you. In fact, if you don't finish it, you can keep the channel on the Discord, and you can keep working on it. There'll probably be another challenge in X many months' time. You can finish it
Get a
for
get a jump start on it. Yeah.
exactly. There's literally no reason not to go by the Discord now and enter into this challenge. It's fun. There's a great group of people working on it. There are prizes to be won. if you're thinking of designing a miniatures game because you're watching this channel, go do it now on the Rule of Carnage Discord. There are other links down there aside from the Discord. There are Patreons, my Patreon and Mike's Patreon specifically. There are links to our website where we sell things you can buy so that we will have money to feed our children. There is a comment section where you can tell us what you think of Mike's ideas for Rad Pirates of the Toxic Seas. Give him some advice and say one thing you would like to see in the game, and tell us the game idea that you've just had that you're going to go to the Discord and ask for Channel 4 and design. Hit the like and subscribe button step while you're down there. But for now, from this episode of Rule of Carnage, I think it's a thank you and goodbye. So, thank you and goodbye.
Bye.
Ahoy.